Hey there, folks. Welcome to the edition of Stranger in a Southern Land. I, of course, am your host, Jake Manning. Today on the program, I talked to the man who represents District 37 in the North Carolina Senate, and that man is Jeff Jackson, and he represents me in the North Carolina Senate. I can't tell you how amazed that I was able to get in contact with Jeff. I reached out through email and then through Facebook, and I started conversating with somebody who I thought was just an intern or somebody who ran his Facebook page. But then all of a sudden, after a few correspondence, I was like, oh no, I'm talking directly to Jeff. And it's mind-blowing to me that I could get a hold of my representative this easily and ask for an hour-long conversation where I talk about all kinds of issues and topics and policies and just took a real chance and said that I was going to record it and release it online. This is amazing to me. And I can't thank Jeff enough for taking time out of his day to indulge me in a sense and just talk to me straightforward and shot straight with me. Really, really great conversation coming down the pike. We talk about all kinds of things and policies and stuff like that. Of course, the hot button issue of HB2, and of course, talking about the fact that Jeff is in the minority in the Senate of North Carolina. It's run by, a Republican majority right now, and Jeff is in the Democratic side in the minority. But, Jeff talks about that's part of the strength and it's how he handles that, and how he is handling that is amazing. He's just got a wonderful story, how this whole opportunity came to be and how he's handling it. So part of the reason I wanted to do this is to kind of shed a light on our politicians and our people in our representative government. There's a lot of people of my age or people that are younger than me that are disillusioned with government and feel like they can't reach out. This podcast is proof that you can reach out to your elected officials very, very easily. And also too, I'm sure when people walk into the voting booth this November, they're going to know who they're going to vote for president. They're going to know that right away. And then they're going to see all these names pop up in all these different positions, and they're not going to know who to vote for. And they're just going to be picking people at random. But hopefully with this podcast, when it comes time to decide who you want representing you, if you live in District 37, you can look and know that Jeff Jackson, oh, I remember that conversation he had with Jake Manning. Oh, I know his policies. Oh, I know the type of individual he is because he did a long form interview. And I feel like, podcasts are a great opportunity to get to know your elected officials. This isn't like a soundbite. This is a long form interview. You get a real sense of who Jeff is. So hopefully people who watch this, you get a sense of who's representing you, and hopefully he won your vote. So that's hopefully the goal of this whole thing, is for you to know your elected officials a little bit better. So anyways, I can't thank Jeff enough for taking time out of his day, a whole hour out of his day of all things too. So thank you for that, Jeff. But also too, big thank you to Shining Wizards Network for getting this program out to as many eyeballs and earbuds as possible. I can't thank them enough. And make sure you check out all their other podcasts out at shiningwizardsnetwork.com. Also too, big thank you to my producer, Don, all the hard work he does for this program as well, and all his other programs, which are available at dsct.tv, as well as my other podcast, How Did This Get Booked, which I do with my good friend, Zane Riley. Now, I've got a lot of dates I want to feed to you guys. I got a lot of comedy dates, a lot of wrestling dates, and I'm going to say them as accurately and quickly as possible. But like I said, I'm just trying to get you engaged in local art, local comedy, and local wrestling. It's out there. There's a good time out there, guys. And I'm trying to give it to you right now and give you an opportunity to go do something fun and exciting, entertaining, and giving you something that's worth your hard-earned dollar. Most specifically, this Tuesday, September 13th, if you are listening to this podcast in a timely fashion, so basically tomorrow, I will be performing at the Comedy Zone at the 180 Seconds Open Mic. For more information about that show, make sure you log on to cltcomedyzone.com. Now, speaking of politics, this Thursday, September 15th, Monstrous Comedy puts on the roast of Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Now, the Donald and Hillary won't technically be there, literally, maybe figuratively. We've got some surprise for you, that's for sure. But for more information about that show, just log on to Facebook at Monstrous Comedy, and that will be taking place in Plaza Midwood at Petra's Piano Bar in Plaza Midwood. So I highly recommend you come out to that show. I think it's going to be probably one of the best shows that Monstrous puts on this entire year. A lot of big surprises, a lot of good comedians. I highly recommend that you come out this Thursday, September 15th, for the roast of Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Now this Friday, Queens of Combat makes its return to Gibsonville, North Carolina this September 16th, this Friday, like I said. Very excited about that show. For more information about that show, make sure you log on to Combat Queens. And while you're on combatqueens.com, you're going to find out about the matinee show that's happening the next day, September 17th. That's this Saturday, actually, which will be a matinee show, which will be happening in Gastonia just before PWX runs that night. That's right, it's a double header. And I guess it's one ticket price, you get two shows. So September 17th, you get to see Queens of Combat and PWX all for one ticket price. For more information about the PWX card, make sure you log on to pwxpro.com. Now on this Sunday, September 18th, my good buddy Freight Train. Hopefully people who are fans of this program know who Freight Train is. If you don't, I highly recommend that you go out and watch the power of the Freight Train documentary, or look up $5 Wrestling and Freight Train. A lot of great clips of him online. He's just a wonderful and fantastic human being, and he's running his own wrestling show this Sunday, September 18th in Albemarle, North Carolina at the E.E. Waddell Rec Center. Now it's going to be a 6 p.m. bell time because I know there's a Panthers game at 1 p.m., so there will be no conflict that way. So you can watch the Panthers win and then come on down to the E.E. Waddell Rec Center in Albemarle, North Carolina for some good professional wrestling presented to you by my good buddy Freight Train. Now, the next Wednesday, September 21st, there will be a pop-up show presented by Monstrous Comedy at Tuft Furniture Store in Plaza Midwood. The last time they ran this show, it was amazing. It was not to be missed. For those of you that didn't show up to that, you missed out on one heck of a good show, but there was a very good crowd, and they were sitting on beds and dressers and very high-end furniture, and it's bring your own beer, so show up to this show, bring your own beer. There'll be popcorn, people sitting on very expensive couches and recliners and stuff like that, seeing some amazing comedy. I will be your host for the evening, and I believe Mo Aurora will be coming up from Atlanta. This is going to be an amazing show. I remember David Perdue did it last year, and just unbelievable vibe, unbelievable venue for comedy, mostly because it's a furniture store, and that's why it's a pop-up show. It just kind of happens and pops up out of nowhere. So make sure you pop in to Tuft on Wednesday, September 21st for Monstrous Comedy. A comedy couch party, I believe is what they're calling it, so make sure you show up for that. And anyways, next Thursday and Friday, I will be with Big Time Wrestling, Morganton and Raleigh, respectively. Of course, Morganton will be at the Colette Rec Center, and then, of course, Friday will be at the historic Dorton Arena in Raleigh, North Carolina. Ricky Steamboat, that is, Cody Rhodes, and Ric Flair will both be on this show. So you get a Steamboat, a Rhodes, and a Flair all on a show together. This is amazing, guys. One ticket price, unbelievable. You get three major superstars, one ticket price to see all three of them on a wrestling show for Big Time Wrestling. For more information about that show, make sure you log on to btwpro.com. Anyways, without further ado, like I said, there's a lot of dates coming up in North Carolina. A lot of fantastic things are going on in this state as far as comedy, as far as professional wrestling, but also too, a lot of very good things are coming down the pike as far as the state and what to look forward to. Hopefully, we can be a part of that. And the best way to be a part of that is be engaged in the political process. And by you guys sticking around and listening to this podcast, that's exactly what you're doing. So I've got to commend you guys for that. And I hope you enjoy my conversation with Jeff Jackson here on Stranger in a Southern Land. Why, will somebody come and find you after 2 hours?
No, no one will find me.
No one will find you?
No one's looking.
Nobody's
Not
looking.
here. No, it's just me and my desk today.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Have we started? Is this the beginning?
Yeah.
Oh,
Usually,
geez, you
it's
didn't tell me that.
it's
like
a gotcha.
rolling start.
Yeah, just a rolling start because I do a nice big flowery intro and tell everybody how fantastic you
I
are.
was about to spill my guts.
That was what I was hoping for. But you're a seasoned pro. You see a red light. I got a microphone in front of me. Who knows what's going to happen? So, Which, maybe I should get the lady at the security desk to do my intro. She was telling me all kinds of wonderful things about you this morning.
Well, Larissa is great. If she wants to do the intro, I would jump at that chance. She's really good.
Oh, yeah. She's like wonderful. She's like, oh, I love him. He's got my vote, everything, all that stuff. So
That's good. Well, we do work together, so that's nice.
yes, you probably have to see her every morning.
That's
and
right.
check in and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which is a nice building. You got nice setup office work here. This is great. Jeff.
Oh, it's a beautiful building. I mean, never in my life, honestly, did I think I'd have the opportunity to work in a place like this beautiful city and this beautiful building. I mean, it's just all this happened really suddenly. 2.5 years ago, I was an assistant district attorney in Gaston County, and I loved that. It was a wonderful job. I lived here in Charlotte, but I worked there, so I would commute. And then one day at the end of court, a defense attorney came up to me and he said, "Jeff, did you hear the news?" I said, "No, what happened?" He said, "The mayor of Charlotte was just arrested by the FBI." And I said, "Well, that's
wonderful news.
I said, "That's amazing." And then I just kind of went on about my day because I didn't think it would impact me in any way, just as most people wouldn't think it would impact them in any way, right? It's just a big piece of news for the city that you live in that's interesting for that reason, but not a personal reason. But we needed a new mayor, and they wanted to pick someone from outside city council. They wanted someone above reproach, right? A person of utmost integrity in that moment. So they reached out to Dan Clodfelter, State Senator Dan Clodfelter. He became mayor. And then we needed a new Dan Clodfelter in the state Senate, and I got tapped to do that. And one of the first consequences was I had to quit my job as a prosecutor because under the North Carolina state constitution, you're actually not allowed to be a prosecutor and an elected official at the same time. So I had to leave that job, which was too bad. I really liked that job.
Well, how did they decide you of all people? Were you just happened to be walking by when they needed somebody?
Yeah, I was on the sidewalk, and they said, "We're going to pick somebody."
I'll work for public service, or whatever.
Yeah. Well, it's not far off. So the way we fill vacancies in North Carolina is when someone departs office, whichever party that person was a member of picks the replacement on the county level. So it's not the state party, it'd be the county party. So the county party, and actually only the county party precinct officials within that district get to participate in the election. So there were 50 people who got to vote to replace Dan Clodfelter. Dan Clodfelter was one of them. He recused himself because a number of the people running were friends of his. And I got 25 votes. So won in a landslide, basically. Yeah.
Okay, so now you're state senator. Now were you happy about this? In the sense that, obviously you liked your job, I imagine, at the time?
Yeah, and I like my
itching for
family,
something
too,
more?
and I got to spend a lot of time away from them now, which I don't appreciate and is certainly the hardest part. We have an 8-year-old and a 17-month-old. So that's a real challenge, spending time away in Raleigh, because it's not like I can drive home when we're in session, after we're done for the day and spend the night with my family. It's 3 hours in a car. It doesn't work.
Yeah, and especially Raleigh traffic, and then if you hit it,
sure, right? It's
Charlotte.
sometimes an hour just getting out of Raleigh, and then
Yeah.
you come and you hit the traffic when you get onto North Mecklenburg, and then it's maybe sometimes an hour just getting from North Meck to the home. So you really can't do a commute on a daily basis. So I end up spending a lot of time away from them. That's definitely the hardest part. Yeah.
But as you move on, you're now in the state senate and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What were your expectations walking into a job like that?
Well, I knew the political math that I was working with. I mean, we've got 2 chambers, House and Senate. Both are dominated by the Republican Party right now. So the Republicans have supermajorities in both chambers, which means they can override any governor's veto, which is what they've done pretty much. They've overridden basically all of the governor's vetoes, what relatively few he's issued. So I knew walking in that, not only was I not going to be running stuff, but my party certainly is not going to be running stuff. And part of the reason why, frankly, I got elected was because there weren't a whole lot of people running for office, because here in Mecklenburg, if you're a Democrat, as I am, on the city council or the county commission, you're in the majority, and you kind of get to run stuff. So I don't think too many of those folks were interested in giving that up to go to Raleigh to join a minority.
Yeah.
Where it's much harder to get things done. So walking in, to answer your question, I kind of understood, all right, this is going to be a long-term process of becoming a credible voice that can speak to both sides of the aisle, because if you can't do that, you will never get anything done. If when you speak, the majority party just turns their back and isn't interested, and they don't regard you as a credible voice, you are dead in the water, and you can't serve your constituents, you can't serve your district. Building that kind of credibility takes time, and it involves staying late at night and reading the bills and finding substantive ways to contribute in ways that will never bring you any real attention, right? Your name's not going to go on any of those contributions. That's just the way it works, right? It can be your idea, but it can't have your name on it if you're in the minority, which is fine. That's no problem. And it just involves a lot of kind of nitty-gritty detail work in order to move the needle a little bit with respect to a number of different bills. And so that was my theory going in, was that if I just kind of stayed late, read the bills, spoke to people, and was really earnest about trying to make bills a little bit better on a consistent basis, that eventually I could build a reputation as someone who could be trusted to do that. And it's still early. You know, I'm still basically in my first term. I finished Dan's term, and then I started my own first term. It's only a 2-year term. I've only been there for 2.5 years. But that's what I'm working towards. I'm working towards trying to be someone like my predecessor was, Dan, who when he spoke, people listened because generally he was worth listening to. Mm-hmm. We'll see. It's going to take a while to get to that point, regardless of whether or not the political math changes and my party goes up or down. It's still a long process of just establishing yourself as someone worth listening to and worth working with.
Yeah, and I find that something very interesting, especially the people that I know, that when I talk about politics, I feel like most people I talk to, fall Democrat, and I feel like, and like you said, the city falls very Democrat. Yeah. But then when we start looking at like general election stuff or policies that are affected by the state, all of a sudden it's the complete opposite of what the rest of the state is.
Yeah, I think you're probably right about that. And to be honest, I think when you actually talk to people at length and get past the Republican-Democrat affiliation, and you actually bring out an issue, a specific issue with public education or transportation or health care, and you give them the information on that issue, and you show them the choice that we're facing or the resources that we have, most people tend to arrive at pretty much the same spot on a lot of these big questions. I really feel there's a hidden consensus on a lot of major issues that's being obfuscated by politicians who have an interest in artificially dividing us. I mean, on major questions, healthcare, transportation, education, I really feel like if politicians were more honest with people about here's the choice that we're facing, here are the resources that we have, I think you would see a really surprising level of consensus on those issues.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, I always find the hallmark of everything is communication and education. Now, how do we educate and communicate to those people that these are the things that we need to do? Just because I'm a Democrat doesn't mean you have to tone it out, but how do we communicate those things?
One of the best things that's happened recently is social media has really taken off as a way to disseminate information. And it's true that that's kind of balkanized information dissemination, and that people tend to go towards where their biases naturally are, and they look for information that confirms those biases. But just the tidal wave of information that social media has unleashed is just a huge net positive as far as educating the population about the actual issues that we face. And it's not a perfect system, there never will be, but just the raw tonnage of information that people are exposed to now that they never were exposed to before is phenomenal. And I believe over a long enough time frame, 10, 20 years, you're going to see a major upgrade in the political discourse. I think when millennials come on board, they are right now the largest eligible group of voters in the country. Now, they're not going to be the largest group of voters because they're not going to vote.
Yeah, which is sad. Like you're a young man. I'm fairly young. You know what I'm saying? We're young individuals. We understand the importance of the political system, but it's frustrating to me when I talk to somebody that they're like, "Oh, my vote doesn't matter."
Right.
Where I feel like at your level, you talk about North Carolina Senate, your vote means more than anybody else, like just as important. You know what I'm saying? The voting for those lower level things, like maybe in the large presidential race, but at this level, the civic level and at the state level, that's where it's the most important.
Well, we do pass most of the laws. You know, I think they've passed. Like 5 laws in the last 5 years in D.C. when we passed 800 laws out of Raleigh last year. But as to millennials and young people in general and their voting record, it's true it's not great. It's also true that they're about on par with where people that age typically have been over the last 50 years. And I would also say, look, for the most part, with a few exceptions aside, our entire lives, and I say our, I'm 33, so I was pretty much the first millennial according to the demographers when I was born. So for my entire life and for the lives of my generation, everyone younger, with a few exceptions, we've never seen anything but total garbage from politics. I mean, absolute garbage. And the fact that they're turned off from that, and the fact that they don't feel like there's a lot of return on their investment of time and energy and passion in that area is not surprising. I mean, not only have politicians become incredibly shrill and really shallow in their rhetoric, but they've put up these huge walls between them and the rest of the population in the form of gerrymandering, in the form of absurd campaign finance situations. I mean, they've done everything they can to push people away from the process. So if people say, okay, I'll take the hint, I'll go volunteer at a nonprofit, which young people do in record numbers. I mean, they're putting in volunteer hours left and right. I mean, we shouldn't be all that surprised by that. So that's the generation that I think is going to tune back in. Inevitably, they're going to be involved when they start laying down roots in their communities. They're going to want to see state government take a step up. And they have been exposed to exponentially more information than any generation in human history. They are by far the most diverse and have been exposed to the most diversity of any group of people in world history. And I firmly believe that when they come online, they are going to almost immediately obsolete the truly phony, obviously phony politicians, right? The Ted Cruzes of the world are not going to survive this transition when this highly informed, highly engaged group of voters becomes the dominant voting bloc. Those people are gone.
Yeah, you could eviscerate somebody, immediately on social media. Sometimes unjustly, but sometimes very justly.
I don't even think they're going to make it to the level of evisceration. They're never going to be given the time of day, right? That whole shtick, that whole openly manipulative, never actually being genuine, never being able to have like a genuine conversation like this, being completely devoid of any substance or any sense of reasonability, that you're willing to concede that the other side sometimes has a point, and the demagoguery that comes from that, I think all of that is just not even going to get any oxygen. It won't reach the level of a presidential debate. And that'll be wonderful, because this year we're not having, on the presidential level, a serious conversation about the country. We're facing all these really important issues, and instead of spending time discussing those issues, we have to ward off this deeply ignorant madman and make sure he doesn't get near the nuclear arsenal. So we're spending all of our energy doing that, and we're not talking about climate change or the national debt or a serious approach to foreign affairs. We've got a lot of national security threats and challenges. We're not having a serious conversation about any of that, because we have to make sure that this buffoon doesn't get anywhere near the red button.
Mm-hmm. None of that's been discussed. No policies have been discussed. No, bigger issues, high-minded ideas.
No one is smarter for having gone through this election, right? It's like that Adam Sandler movie where he says, "We are all now dumber for having experienced this." We are all now dumber for having watched Donald Trump do his dance over the last year. We're going to have to spend years re-educating. Okay, we actually are a serious country. We believe in taking serious strategic approaches to our challenges, and we don't think that we can just take a flyer on this real estate guy.
Yeah. Who probably doesn't even want the job.
Who obviously doesn't want the job, because he's not running a serious campaign, right? He's pocketing his money. It's so obvious to me. I really wish that Trump donors would wake up, because he's just pocketing their money. And I bet you anything, 3, 4, 5 weeks after the campaign is over, after he loses, because he's going to lose, there's going to be this big expose in the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal. They're going to run the numbers, and they're going to show how much money that Trump actually pocketed. And it's going to be millions of dollars. And they're going to say, look, he lost Ohio by 5 points. He could have put the money there. He lost North Carolina or Virginia by 3 or 4 points. He could have put the money there. And all of his donors are going to say, I can't believe it. I can't believe he pocketed his own money, pocketed all that campaign money. And I think that's unreal. He's just so obviously a fraud. I mean, there are frauds in politics on both sides, certainly. But a lot of them are like good at it. And I can sort of understand some people being suckered, but this guy's not good at it.
Yeah.
He's an obvious fraud. He's like the world's worst used car salesman. Like, he opens the hood and there's no engine there. And he says, "Ain't she a beaut?" You know? And untold people are just falling for it. And I genuinely don't understand.
Yeah.
I can't see how people could be that susceptible.
I totally agree, and that's the thing is like, you know, because he doesn't spend a lot, like always using his own money. That's why he's not spending a lot. No, what he's taking in, he's putting in his pocket.
No, he's pilfering all of you people.
Yeah.
He is absolutely taking you for a ride, and he's going to laugh about it. Watch, after he loses, 6 months down the road, 9 months down the road, he's going to give a quote about how good this campaign was to him personally, for his personal financial situation. He's not going to care one bit. He doesn't care about this country. He doesn't care one bit. He's never cared about this country. He doesn't care about the vets. He only cares about himself. And that is so painfully obvious. I don't see why more people don't see it.
Yeah.
But anyway, he's done. I mean, he's going to lose, and which is going to be wonderful, by the way, for us and the whole world to see that he never really came close to the nuclear arsenal. And then once this new generation comes online, his nomination, hopefully, and the nomination of people like him, will be rendered a genuine impossibility, and we'll have a more serious conversation. It's always going to be politics, right? But we can have at least a somewhat serious conversation in the midst of a presidential election. That should not be too much to ask.
Yeah, because nobody's talking about issues. We're talking about who's more crooked, who's more like, who's, you know.
It's just worst case scenario.
Yeah, that's what everybody's. That's what we're
completely
discussing.
vapid, like the complete absence of anything helpful as far as guiding this country.
I can't name you one policy from either side that everybody's pushing. That I'm pushing education there. This is something.
No.
You know, none of that.
No. Hillary's doing what I would do, which is to stand up and say, "I'm a reasonable person. I understand these issues. My opponent is the complete opposite of that. And so this just comes down to the fact that I'm qualified and he's not." I mean, if I were in her position, I would probably do something similar to that too. But it means that she doesn't really have to get pressed on her position on all of those issues, which we would benefit from. I want to hear her talk about those issues at length. And look, she does a much better, I mean, I'm not going to say they're in the same boat as far as not confronting issues. She's much more substantive than he is. But as far as actually having to compete on the ideas, there is no competition of ideas because he has none. So the fact that she has some and has put out some policy papers means she wins by default. Well, I want to hear from the other party. I want to hear their ideas and what they actually have to say if it's something constructive. It's just not happening this year.
And what's concerning to me is those people that do support him. Like after he loses, like what comes of those people? You know what I'm saying? You know, I understand the rage and the anger they have towards politics, but like, I always think of there was a book and there was a TV miniseries. Remember it was like I watched it during school. It's called The Wave.
I think that might have been before my time, Jay.
Might have been, which is funny. I'm only a year older than you, and you talk about how you're like the first generation of millennials.
Well,
now you make me feel, because I definitely don't feel like I identify with those, but apparently we're only about a year or two apart.
Well, maybe when I'm your age, I'll see things differently.
But it was about a teacher, and it was actually based on true events where a teacher basically, kids couldn't understand how Hitler could come into power. And basically he just ran an experiment where he took the weaker students in class and elevated them to higher positions in the class and, you know, told them that they were now in charge of this, and, you know, gave them all a hand signal to say, and it very much washed over those people. They said, we're part of the wave and we're this, and all of a sudden he took the weaker people and elevated them, and he saw this whole change in everything and people going along and in people's mindset. And then he started saying, we believe in this now. And just small ideal things like we believe in, you know, certain things that weren't even true. And he just changed it. And I remember like the saddest part of that book and that television program that I watched, because I think it was like an after school special thing, was the reaction after the professor explained to him, like, this is all an experiment, is those weaker students had nothing to believe in then. They didn't know what to do. You gave me a reason to feel strong, and now I'm no longer empowered anymore. How do I feel now? You know what I'm saying? And how do those people get connected back into the process and believe in it again?
Well, that's a really good question because, I mean, I guess the temptation for folks on my side is to say, you lost, you backed the wrong horse, you backed a charlatan.
Which
and
is
now-
even more divisive
Which
than
is
before.
bad, right?
Yeah.
That's a bad response.
Yeah.
You have to provide focus. And what I would suggest is for politicians to start being very candid about how steep some of the economic challenges are that we're facing. As challenging as this economic environment is, it is going to get harder from here because of globalization and in particular because of automation. And I wish that politicians would be very honest with people about that, because it would give us a sense of national mission and national purpose, and it wouldn't be at all an artificial sense. It would be very real, because the clock really is ticking on how much time we have to prepare ourselves and to prepare our workforce to be truly competitive in an economy that is going to start reducing jobs by tens of millions because of automation. We have to produce a more competitive workforce. We need to be the most competitive in the world. And if we took that as a national mission and national purpose, that would bring people together. And look, it needs to happen. I mean, not just for political purposes, but for our own national health. We really need to gear up and get ready for how competitive the world is about to become. The estimate is 60% of jobs that exist today are going to be gone in 20, 25 years. Well, we're going to create new jobs, but there's no economic law that says those new jobs have to be created in the United States, or that you have to hire American citizens for those jobs. We have to outcompete everyone else. That means taking preparatory steps. You don't just do that on game day, right? It's going to take years to really get in a position to succeed the way we expect to succeed over the course of the next century. And I would focus everybody on that. But see, the problem there is the very first step, politicians leveling with people. Very few politicians are going to say what I just said to you about how much more competitive the world is going to become because of how competitive it is right now and how hard it is to get a good job right now. Nobody wants to hear it's probably going to get harder. But it is. That's just the facts. Automation, industrial robotics, software, it is going to start shedding these jobs that pay, between $10 and $15 an hour, and then it's going to go up the scale from $15 to $20 an hour jobs, and it's going to keep going up the scale. And we have to prepare our workforce to be able to get higher paying and better jobs. We can do it. We have the institutions in place, but it's going to take a new level of commitment and a clarity of purpose about that mission. We really need to level with people about how competitive the world's going to be.
Well, you talk about the changes, and obviously something that's on your mind. How does government enable that? How does government fix that? How can that be done?
Well, government's primary role is going to be through education in order to create the most competitive workforce. There are other things that we can do in order to create better jobs or lay the foundation for the creation of better jobs, and that goes with having a smarter tax policy and a smart export strategy and things like that. Trade is a big piece of that conversation, and so the idea of this Donald Trump routine where he just goes out and smashes trade and smashes all of our trade partners is absurd and not helpful to helping America actually prosper in the next century, or rather in this century. But education is going to be the primary answer. And I think the biggest piece of that answer, of education, needs to be early childhood education. And I don't think it's even close. I think early childhood education is far and away the lowest hanging fruit within the realm of education, the most compelling, just from a strictly return on investment prospect of any other area, K through 12, community college, university system. Look, I'm for all of that. We can have conversations about all of that, and there are ways to improve. But the next frontier for public education needs to be early childhood. We need to get all of our kids across the literacy bridge. 0 to 8 is the literacy bridge. And if they're not across that bridge by age 8, chances are they will never get across. And if you are not fully literate going into this economy, you have no chance. You are in poverty. You will not escape. And if you're in poverty, chances are your kids are going to be in poverty. Early childhood is how you break the generational cycle of poverty. We need all of our citizens reading. We need all of our citizens graduating from high school and then going on and getting some form of post-secondary education. 90% of the jobs that have been created in the last 10 years require some form of post-secondary education. And that number's not going down. That number's going to go up. Eventually, it's going to be 100%. So the idea that it's acceptable that 25% of our kids don't graduate from high school, no, that's gone. 100% of our kids need to graduate. Then 100% need to get some form of schooling after. It doesn't have to be a 4-year degree. It doesn't even necessarily have to be a community college. We need a major apprenticeship program nationally and in North Carolina that we don't have. We don't really talk about apprenticeships much. That's a huge avenue that we need to widen to make sure that high schoolers can come out and further their education while earning an income. And the apprenticeship's the way to do it. There are a lot of countries that have made really good use of an apprenticeship program. But the short answer to your question is the main way that we're going to outcompete is by having the best education system in the world. And we can do that. I mean, we're not doing too great there right now, but things haven't sunk to a level that we can't bounce back. We really can.
Mm-hmm. That's true. A couple of things in there that I want to dissect a little bit and kind of expand upon because we just kind of said them. You were talking about one of the things is smarter tax strategy as far as like building businesses and stuff like that. Maybe expand upon that because it seems like a lot of the tax strategy, and I've seen this a lot in towns that I've lived with in Illinois. If a big company comes in, you just give them a big tax break.
Yep.
They come in, they move in, and that's it.
Yep.
That doesn't seem like a very complex or a smart one.
No, it's a blunt instrument.
That seems like a blunt instrument. But what's a smart way? You talk about a tax strategy to boost business.
Well, that's a complicated question because there's so many different tax levers that you can pull, right? So you've got your property tax, you've got your state and federal income tax, you've got your sales tax, and on the state level, the tax picture looks very different than on the federal level. So on the state level, your income tax is going to be approximately 5%. And on the federal level, it could be 5-6 times that. So there just is no easy answer to that question. One approach is to say we're just going to lower all of our taxes across the board, and that's going to draw in business. And I don't think the evidence backs that up. So taking kind of an ideological approach to taxes, that all taxation must be bad and therefore we will fight it everywhere, I think that's probably not the way to go. And people need to understand that, at least on a state level, when you take that approach, the big price that you're paying is public education. Because most of what the state spends money on is public education. So, for instance, when the Republicans came in and took power in 2010 in North Carolina, the corporate tax was 6.9%. That was the highest in the Southeast. Probably not great to be the highest corporate taxer in a region, right? Mm-hmm. So they said, we're going to lower it. So it went to 6, which was about the average, went to 5, which is below the average. Then it went to 4. Now it's going to 3 this January. They want it to go to 0. Well, we will be far and away well below the average, the southeastern average, and every percentage point pulls tens of millions away from public education, perhaps hundreds of millions. So that's a major policy decision that may not have as strategic an effect as you really want. Because the idea is, yeah, we want business here, but not at the price of undermining one of the main reasons they would come, which is for a strong public education system. So, I mean, there is never going to be unanimity around where we should be setting the tax level, but I think where the discussion should be is how do we balance between a friendly tax climate and the long-term investments that we need to make. And right now, you don't hear much of that balance, frankly, from either side, right? One side talks about let's raise taxes significantly. At least some voices on my side say that, have kind of an indiscriminate approach. And then on the right, there's a whole lot of indiscriminate talk about taxes that if there is a tax, then it must be bad. Let's have a balanced discussion about it. Let's actually use numbers and say, here's the choice. We can reduce $100 million in taxes, and that will pull $100 million out of K through 12. What do we think about that choice? You just never hear that from anyone on either side.
And has those decreases in corporate tax actually benefited in more jobs?
No. But, their argument is to give them credit that in the long run it will. Our economy has pretty much tracked the national economy as far as the recovery from 2008. There are a couple of numbers that are half a point off, like the unemployment rate's a little bit different, our wage growth rate is a little bit different, but we've fundamentally tracked the national economy. And what's funny to me is my friends on the right, as far as North Carolina's recovery, they give all credit to Governor McCrory, who basically has no political power whatsoever, and no credit to President Obama. Our economy has done as well as about the national economy over the last few years. Our tax policy has not produced any discernible impact on job growth in North Carolina. Maybe it will. It's the type of thing that you expect to see an impact from over a 10-year period. So I'm not going to sit here and say that because we haven't seen it in the last 4 years that it's not coming. But I will say that the reason why we're having these conversations around things like teacher pay and being kind of towards the bottom of the barrel nationally for teacher pay is a direct consequence of the tax decisions that they've made. So we are deliberately underfunding public education in the hope that we will make up for it with sustained job growth above what we see nationally and in the region. That hasn't happened yet. That hasn't come to pass.
Well, and what you just said, I probably answered another question I had later on, was the idea of education. I remember several years ago, probably around 2010, us being ranked, I think, in the 20s or something like that in national education, and now I just found out we're in the 40s.
Well, yeah, there are a lot of different metrics for that.
Yeah,
so
I'm sure there's
you could be
different
talking about
polls.
teacher pay. You could be talking about per capita, how much we spend per student. You could be talking about test scores and where we rank there. But the basic concern is if you keep underfunding public education, because we're funding it less now, adjusted for inflation, than we were before the recession, nothing good comes from that. In an economy that's going to be driven by education and information, nothing good comes from undereducating your people, especially when you establish a brand as a state that doesn't invest in education. So what we're hearing from a lot of business executives that are looking at North Carolina now is, what's up with education? I want to move there, but I also want to raise my family there. My employees want to raise their families there. So education is now on the radar of businesses that are looking at North Carolina. So when we trot out our blunt instrument of some big tax credit, they're weighing on the other end of that scale underinvestment in public education, which is exactly what I would do if I were in their shoes. It's become a business concern.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, there's also a lot of social things that have happened and stuff like that in as far as the HB2 and everything like that, and that whole...
How long did it take for HB2 to come up? We've been talking for 20 minutes. That's pretty good. That's a record. Normally it's number one.
About 35 minutes.
That's good. Well, I commend you, sir.
Yes. Well, I've got more things to do. We've got more axe to grind and stuff like that, as opposed to something that's been reported over and over and over again. But if I don't bring it up, I'll be blasted in the comments section. So
we don't want that.
We don't want that. It's a very nasty place, the comment section.
Yeah,
online.
no, that's true. I've stopped reading.
Yeah, but it's like I said, it's one of those. It's another one of those things. When I talk to friends, I feel like most of my friends are very, very liberal, very progressive, and it's almost heartbreaking to me to hear people say that that's a negative term. People use that as a cut down. You're just a damn progressive. The word progressive means move forward. You don't want me to move forward because time seems to be moving forward, but I'm not supposed to as an individual.
Yeah, I hear you on that. But then again, I've got a lot of progressive friends who use the word conservative as a put down. Yeah. And they probably shouldn't do that either.
And I agree with that too. Yeah. So, I don't want to tread over some answers and stuff like that. I just mostly want to bring up, like I said, the main concern with that whole bill, HB2, was the idea of losing, the ability to go to a civic courthouse locally and file a complaint of discrimination.
Yep.
I dated an African American. My girlfriend's African American, and she could be fired because of race. Or if she got pregnant, they could have literally said, "No, you're not going to be around for a few months. Goodbye."
Right. She would have had to make a federal case out of it at that point.
And it's the most mind blowing thing to me that was allowed, and just it happened.
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of concerns about HB2, and I think one of the reasons why it's sustained as an issue and it wasn't just like a 3-day issue was because there were so many problems with it. It really was the worst case scenario from a political process standpoint to a political substance standpoint. I always start when I talk about HB2 with just basically educating people about, I think, a very important fact here. The Charlotte Ordinance that we passed was not radical. It exists in over 200 cities nationwide, some of those cities for decades. It exists in 17 states, a lot of states that aren't your typical progressive states like Maine and Iowa, a lot of cities that aren't your typical progressive cities like Columbia, South Carolina. And in all those states and all those cities that have passed the same protection, North Carolina is the only one that reacted like this and that went in and struck it down on behalf of a city. And that's why we've been singled out as a state that went further than any other state in giving a swift kick to the gay community, because that is absolutely what it was. The motivation behind HB2 had nothing to do with defense of anyone's safety. It was about running offense on the gay community. And the fact that that was so transparent and so clear to people was what made it so revolting and what produced the business backlash, the level of sustained business backlash that we've seen. And most of these folks in the General Assembly, the Republicans, regret this. And if they could go back in time, they certainly would not pass HB2 again. But now they feel stuck politically because they know they'll be punished by their base, by their primary voters, if they do what they should do and repeal it. They've been told by their attorneys that they're probably going to lose the case in court. And so that's given them some breathing room. They feel great about the fact they're going to lose the case in court. So now they don't have to do what's hard and actually go out there and admit they were wrong and repeal it. It's cost us about $500 million just in Charlotte. And it's cost our brand untold amounts. I mean, what's really scary about the effect of HB2 isn't the businesses that we know we've lost. It's the businesses that we don't know we've lost. It's all those businesses that were looking to move to 4 or 5 states and had a list on the wall of their names and just struck through North Carolina after this. I mean, if you're a tech company and you can move to one of 10 or 15 states, why would you? Why would you take the heat? I can certainly understand that that decision would be much more difficult for a tech company at this point. And frankly, I don't think we're going to land a major tech company while HB2 is on the books. And that is the future of our economy. We have spent years, decades, cultivating a reputation as a state that is friendly to high tech and startups and creative talent. And we have just put all of that on pause for the foreseeable future, right when our economy is transitioning in that direction, right when we're accelerating in that direction. We've just given all of that a brush off. For what? What exactly did we get in return? Except an international black eye. And now the governor's doubling down. McCrory ran an ad yesterday talking about how great HB2 was. McCrory never wanted HB2. I don't think he actually believes in it. I don't think he ever wanted to sign it. I think he was under a lot of political pressure to do it, and he caved to that pressure, and now he's got to go out and pretend that he thinks it's some great idea. I don't think he does. I think it's pure political song and dance for him. And the fact that he used to be mayor of Charlotte, and he should care about this town. I mean, it should matter to him that he's done $500 million worth of needless economic carnage to Charlotte by signing that bill. It doesn't appear to matter. He's putting politics above it, and it escapes me how he's capable of doing that. I really don't see it.
Well, you speak with a lot of integrity. You talk about people that do the song and dance, because we see it all the time, and about politicians. And you talk about a lot about like the vision of politicians and how people see them. Where does that integrity come with you? Like, where does that come from? Like, you could be one of these guys that's like, yeah, sure, I could use this political office as something that I could gain from and go from, and I could play whatever song and dance I want. But where does that integrity come with you?
Well, I was a criminal prosecutor before I had this job. And I really liked being a criminal prosecutor. One of the things I liked about it was that you never have to make an argument that you don't personally believe in as a prosecutor. So if I didn't think he was guilty, it was just case dismissed. If I thought he was guilty, but, given the circumstances, there were mitigating circumstances and we could work out some type of second chance for the guy, well, we could do that too. If I was halfway through trial and I realized that my victim was lying, I could just stand up and say, Your Honor, case dismissed. We're done here. And my job wasn't to win cases. It was to seek justice. And I really liked that. That's why I wanted the job in the first place. I went to law school for that job. And the way that I assumed office in the General Assembly was such that I had very little political pressure on me, frankly, to deviate from that course. I mean, I'm in the minority party. I can't be threatened with being stripped of my chairmanship from any committee because I don't have a chairmanship because I'm in the minority. None of us do. I can pretty much just say what I actually think. And so the idea is to just keep doing that and develop a habit of that such that if and when the political sands shift, that's just who I am and who people expect me to be. And we'll let the cards fall where they may.
See, and I've noticed that a lot because I've really enjoyed since we've lined up this interview. I've liked your Facebook and the posts that you put out all the time. And like, there's a couple of posts that I put up like, for a guy that's running for office, I don't know if I would put that same thing out, like talking about the party lines and how they've been drawn up in this state, and just kind of, like, this is what's wrong. This is what I feel it's right. Like, it's a sense of freedom to it.
Well, there's no point in my having this job unless I'm going to take that approach to it because, I quit a job to take this job. I spend a lot of time away from my family. In the minority party, it's really difficult to get legislation passed. So, a big part of any value that I'm going to have is going to be in shooting straight with people and in using the small microphone that I have to let people know what's actually happening in their state. If I'm not doing that, then I'm wasting my time up there. That's most of the value that I bring at this point, is just by communicating with the rest of the state as clearly as possible. And it feels like the right thing to do. I don't know. Maybe it's not politically smart, but I'm not going to be one of these phony politicians. I hate those guys. I really hate those guys.
Maybe you saw Mr. Smith Goes to Washington too many times as a kid.
It's a great movie.
It is. I'm not denying that.
It's a great movie.
It's a fantastic movie. It's definitely worth a watch if anybody has seen it. Hopefully they don't remake it.
Oh, gosh. You know what? Just because you said that, I think they probably will. That has not occurred to me.
Probably with somebody like Matthew McConaughey.
I was going to say Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah. That's exactly who they would remake it with.
I haven't seen the new Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters was a real important part of my childhood. I had all of the Ghostbuster toys. I had the Firehouse. I had Ecto-1. And when I saw the trailer for the new Ghostbusters, I was pretty sad about that. I was really looking forward to it before. I thought, hey, they're putting some... Kristen Wiig is hilarious. I was really excited when I saw the cast. But when I just saw the execution of the concept, I was really sad about that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of critique about the editor of the trailer. Like, I remember Kevin Smith was like, who put this trailer together? Like, this guy doesn't have, concept of editing skills. Like, you have someone like Leslie Jones who is a scene stealer. You have, Kate McKinney, who's unbelievable on Saturday Night Live. But most people I've heard, like, they say, oh, it's a decent movie. But at the same time, too, there might have been some people that said that about Ghostbusters back in the day, too. But I said, but you're dealing with Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah.
You're talking about some, heavy hitters.
Pretty heavy hitters, yeah. That was an indelible mark in my childhood, such that people who only knew me during that period of my life remember that about me, that I was big into Ghostbusters when I was 5, 6, 7 years old. Yeah.
It's like we're comparing Murderers Row Yankees to Yankees of 2001, 2002.
But I'll see the new movie. You shouldn't judge a movie just by the trailer, even though we all do.
Yeah. Oh, that's all it is, and that's all kind of what politics is now. It's
that's
just
true.
A running trailer for.
That's a great You are good at this. That's actually, I've never thought about that. But you're right. I mean, we judge our entire political process by these 30-second ads that get produced that are designed to be misleading and designed to leave people ill-informed and misinformed. And getting back to social media, I think social media is going to play a really important role in combating that because you can get under the surface. And it's going to be expected more and more that our elected officials actually have an authentic presence on social media. Don't just hire someone to be their social media person, but actually have that as a place where you can reach them. Most of my constituents, when they want to get in touch with me, they use social media. That's how most of them want to talk. So it's my job to oblige them. It's not my job to say, like a lot of my colleagues do, oh, I don't do Facebook. Well, really? Because most of your constituents do. And that's where they want to meet you. That's where they want to hear from you. So that's your job, man.
Well, I'm going to say this. I was a little shocked when I Facebooked you that I was talking to you.
Yeah.
Because I've emailed other politicians. I've used regular email, and sometimes if I'm not getting a reply to email, I'll go to the Facebook because everybody checks Facebook. Like you said, everybody, like grandmothers are on it.
Yep.
Like it's a fantastic tool. Like because I help promote wrestling shows, comedy shows across the town, so it's an amazing tool that way because everybody's there. As opposed to putting up a poster and hoping somebody sees it.
Right.
It's far better than that. But when I Facebook messaged you and I got a reply and we're answering back, I'm like, oh, well, I'm probably talking. In my mind, I'm like, I'm talking to probably 20-year-old intern. Somebody's helping running his campaign thing. And then you send a message and it's like, oh, no, this is him. Like I'm talking to him directly right now because he said you and I. And I'm like, hold on, I'm talking to him? And that was I think the most shocking thing to me about it,
Well, it takes me some time, but I try to answer all of my emails and all my Facebook messages and all of my Twitter messages directly. And I've usually got like a 2-day lag on that, but I really enjoy it. Because again, at this point, when I'm in the political minority and I'm not really able to pass major legislation, being able to speak with people directly and let them know that they have an elected official that they can actually talk to is part of the value that I can bring. It's part of a service that I can offer. It makes me feel good. It makes me feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, what more of us are supposed to be doing, just being accessible. If I can't be the most powerful legislator, I'm going to be the most accessible legislator, certainly.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, signs are all up in my neighborhood of your name and stuff like that. And that's another thing. I really wanted to sit down and talk with you here so people can put a name to the face, to a voice, to a message. My hope is that, people can sit down and watch us and they see this as opposed to happening what I think happens with 85 to 95% of the people that walk into voting booths this November.
Sure.
When they're like, okay, I'm going to vote for Hillary or I'm going to vote for Trump. And then all of a sudden there's 20 other options of other elected officials they don't know. And that's like, he has a good sounding name.
Yeah, that's, and I've been there. I really have. I think last year we had 19 people running for Court of Appeals judge. And man, I didn't know, more than 3 of them.
I really actively try to
the judges
research.
are hard.
Yeah, I just trying to research everybody, and especially during the primaries, I'm like, okay, I want to make sure that I'm getting the right people where they need to be. But then, I was like, even just in the primaries, I was overwhelmed. I don't know, and it's hunt and peck on some of those judges sometimes.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that. We could probably make some changes to our voting system that makes it easier for people to do research. There are some states that do vote by mail as an option. So your mailbox is your ballot box, and they send you your ballot 2 weeks before, and you have 2 weeks to kind of sit with that ballot and sit at your computer and look people up. I think that's great. I think we should do that.
Yeah, and like I said, newspapers, they post them, but why can't we put them online? Even today, I was trying to figure out who you were running against. And it took a little bit of work.
Good. I'm happy to hear that. For just this situation, I'm happy to hear that.
It took a little bit of work just to figure out who you were running against. I had to download a spreadsheet from.
Wow.
And then I had to scroll down. I had to know your district, and then it was tiny print, so I had to highlight and then look up. So I figure out, because it's one of the things when you scroll over, you lose track, and I had to find. I was like, okay, Bob Diamond.
I was going to say, for everyone listening, it's Bob Diamond. So you've now got the shortcut through all of that Excel spreadsheet work.
If nothing else on this podcast, I've saved you at least 15 minutes looking up who you're going against.
Yeah.
And which looked up some stuff about him and all kinds of interesting stuff.
He's very conservative, but I've met him and spoken to him, and he seems like a really nice guy when you meet with him in person. We're going to do a debate hosted by the League of Women Voters. I'm looking forward to that. He and I haven't really had a policy discussion. I've seen the stuff that he's posted on Facebook. I assume he's seen the stuff that I've posted. So we're miles apart.
I would say so.
Yeah, but I don't think we're miles apart in terms of just basic humanity. I mean, I've met the guy, so he seems like a nice guy.
I'm sure he wants the absolute best. You know what
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
saying?
sure he does too.
You know what I'm saying? I'm sure he wants the absolute best for this community.
Right.
Much like yourself. But
Right. Yeah, I don't question his sincerity. No.
no, I don't either. But where we said this debate. When's this debate taking place? And so
I think it's in like 2 weeks. I can't remember off the top of my head.
okay. All right. Well,
Yeah.
maybe-
Oh, don't worry. It'll be the talk of the town. Everyone will be talking about it. It's the Hillary-Trump debate and then the Jeff Bob debate.
It's important. It's important for these smaller
Yeah.
things because, like you said, like the legislation that you guys just merely pass throughout the year. This is what really affects us on a daily basis.
That's true. I mean, we pass a ton of legislation, especially in comparison to D.C., which, has been gridlocked for years and is probably going to remain more or less gridlocked for years.
But we're getting pretty close towards the end of the interview. We've almost done like a full hour.
Wow.
And I want to. Time
flies, man.
When you have a charismatic guest, you know what I'm saying? It's very easy to do.
Oh, you're a very skilled interviewer, man. I give you all the credit.
Well, just because you're a politician and stuff like that, I can't let you off the hook with basically kind of the whole theme of this podcast. The reason why I find people of all walks of life, all different varying degrees of success, and corner them in a room with a camera and a microphone just to protect themselves with, is I want to know about the topic of success. What does it mean to you? How do you define it? Is there a monetary goal to it? And everybody's got different answers. And I basically I get all types of different people. Like I said, I talk to professional wrestlers, politicians, comedians, people that are documentary filmmakers, brewers, wineries, and I all ask them the same question. What is success? What does it mean to them, and how do you define it? When I just say the word success, what pops in your head?
I guess what pops into my head is success to me is being really busy and being okay with that. So, I've got this job in the General Assembly. I've got a job as an attorney, and I'm in the National Guard. I've got drilled this weekend. I just got my hair cut. And I've got 2 kids and my wife. We are very busy. She works full time. But we are okay with being that busy. And that's got to mean that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, that I'm doing the right thing. If I were this busy and weren't okay with it, that would be a clear red flag that I need to make a change in my life. But right now, the fact that I'm not really going to get to take a vacation with my wife for like the next, I don't know. I don't want to even think about how long it's going to be.
Oh, mine just got canceled.
Yeah.
I was supposed to take it like last month, but my girlfriend's assignment got bumped.
Yeah.
So-
I mean, I'd love to. We'd love to create that time, but honestly, we're okay. Just living our life and working hard every day. So that must mean that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Ain't about money. God help the folks for whom it's just about money, because they're going to get there if they get there, and they're going to find out that's not what it's really about, just like they all do. I mean, how many testimonials do we have to that effect? So for those folks who think at this point in their life, if they're 19, 20 years old and they really think it's all about money or really think it's about getting that car or that house, do some reading, because the folks who thought that and then got that car and got that house really regret what they sacrificed to get there, which tends to be personal relationships, personal growth, the pursuit of something that you're truly meant to do.
All right. Well, Jeff, before we get out of here, please let everybody know how they can find out about your campaign and do all kinds of stuff, like or information on social medias, all the important links that people need to know about you.
Sure, just type my name in on Google and see what comes up. Some of it will be good, not all of it will be good.
That's very brave of you, because I do vanity search on myself, and there's a couple things that people can probably avoid from what you look at me.
Well, hey, get a balanced perspective by all means. See everything. But if they do that, if they just type in, Jeff Jackson, North Carolina, what's going to come up is my website, probably the Facebook page, maybe the Twitter page. More ways to get in touch with than they're going to really want to take advantage of. Honestly, if you can't get in touch with me, that's on you, because I'm real easy to get in touch with. So please, I encourage people to, I've got an email address through my official website, the General Assembly website. I check that. I've got a campaign website with an address there. That gets checked. Facebook gets checked. Really, I'm too easy to get in touch with.
Obviously, or else this interview wouldn't
And
exist.
anybody listening, if you'd like to talk about any issue in particular, please get in touch with me. Happy to talk.
All right. Well, Jeff, thank you very much for taking
It's my
time out.
pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.